all have things that we would rather avoid, things without which life would seem so much more pleasant. For me personally, top of my to avoid list is boutique cafes specialising in micro-crafted frozen yoghurt. What's that all about? But if you're out and about and you want to have a successful ride, here then are my top 5 things to avoid. Unfortunately, punctures are part and parcel of cycling. If you've not had one, then I would argue that you've not been a cyclist all that long. And so too are minor mechanicals, so problems with gears, brakes or chains that can all put a damper on your day's cycling, particularly if you're unable to fix it yourself by the side of the road. The last thing anyone wants is to be miles from home, faced with a long walk or an expensive taxi ride, particularly if the weather's bad. Now, completely avoiding punctures and minor mechanicals just isn't going to happen, but the chances of getting yourself back on the road as soon as possible greatly increase if you have the right kit with you in the first place. So at the very least, I would suggest that you always have a couple of spare tubes, some tyre levers, a pump and a multi-tool on literally every single ride that you go on. Add to that a mobile phone, a payment card and some cash, and you can get yourself out of pretty much any kind of scrape. And should the worst happen, you should always have some photo ID and the emergency contact details of your nearest and dearest. The bonk, the wall, la fringale, whatever you want to call it, it's not fun. If you've never experienced it, unfortunately it's not quite as exciting as it sounds. Even a sexy sounding French name can't disguise the feeling of complete exhaustion that you get when you've run out of energy. Your legs turn to mush, you go all lightheaded, and you start having hallucinations about Dame Helen Mirren and birthday cakes. No? Well, even if you're a massive fan of her films, I'm going to hazard a guess and say that this is probably an experience that you would rather avoid. And it's so easy to do by simply eating and drinking enough before and during your ride. So pre-ride you will need to eat something. And generally, as we go out first thing in the morning, I'm going to take it that that means breakfast. So a massive bowl of porridge is ideal. And then when you're out on your ride, you can top yourself up with things like energy drinks, bars, gels, the humble banana, and even more humble water. And you'll need to take a couple of mouthfuls every 10 to 15 minutes or so. And don't forget the cafe stop when you're out and about on a club run. It's a great way to give yourself a naughty treat while kidding yourself that you deserve it after only cycling 10 kilometers. Now, one of the things that I'm particularly guilty of is not dressing appropriately for the weather or taking the right clothing with me. If I only had £1 for every time I got caught in the rain without a rain jacket. Here in the UK, we suffer from some particularly unpredictable weather. It can be t-shirts in the morning, followed by an Arctic blizzard in the afternoon, and then back to t-shirts in the evening. Or at least that's how it plays out in my head. Being cold or wet, or cold and wet, isn't a barrel of laughs. Sensible riders avoid this by dressing in layers that can be put on or taken off as the weather changes. But obviously for this to work, you have to have them with you in the first place. Knowing precisely how hard to push yourself can be a bit of an art form, particularly if it's a solo ride. Push yourself too hard and you run the risk of doing yourself some damage, but not push hard enough and you probably won't get any benefit from the ride. So how do you avoid this training dilemma? Well, it depends on a lot of things, but my general rule of thumb is the shorter the ride, the harder it should be. To grossly oversimplify things, when we go out training, we're looking to improve two aspects: the speed at which we ride and the distance that we're able to ride. Now obviously in a perfect world we'd be able to do both, and it will come in time, but for the moment let's just consider it as two separate aspects. Now it probably won't surprise you when I say that the solution to this boils down to good old-fashioned heart rate, and the magic number is 80% of your maximum. So anything above that is what I would consider a hard ride, and anything below that should be used for the longer, more endurance type rides. In a similar vein, many cyclists make the mistake of pedalling in a gear that's either too high or too low for them. Now it's not all bad. Pedalling in a gear that's too low will do wonders for your aerobic capacity, but unfortunately not a lot for your speed. And pedalling in a gear that's too high will give your muscles quite a workout, but then they will probably tire quite quickly. So how do you avoid this potential pedalling minefield? We all have our sweet spot cadence. It's the speed at which you feel most comfortable pedalling along a nice flat road. There's no right or wrong numbers here, but once you have it, you can then base your gearing decisions upon it. I like to call this the constant and two variables. So the constant is your cadence, and the variables are the terrain, which you can't control, and the gearing, which you can. Yes, I know, it's all starting to sound a bit obvious, but over the years I found that by making a conscious effort to think about my cadence and then select the most appropriate gear has taken a lot of the guesswork out of my riding. It's also greatly improved my effort management, particularly when I'm climbing. And then of course it all goes horribly wrong when the gradient becomes so steep I run out of gears. So what are the things you avoid when out cycling? Leave me a comment below. If you found this film useful, please like and share. And if you'd like to get the most out of your cycling, please consider subscribing for my regular weekly uploads. You can do so by clicking on the subscribe button below. And don't forget to click the little bell icon as well so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching.